Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Film Ireland on the Ground. Today we take a step back to last February when Naemi Victoria, academic and Film Ireland correspondent, was at Berlin International Film Festival. This is one of the largest public film festivals in the world. Later in the podcast she'll chat with director Sophie Somerville about her debut feature. But first Naemi catches up with director Feargal Ward, whose short documentary Tin City had its world premiere.
Hello everybody, I'm Naemi Victoria. I am a screenwriter, PhD candidate and film journalist for Film Ireland, and I'm joined today by award-winning filmmaker Feargal Ward, who had his latest short film premiere last week. First of all, congratulations for that and welcome. So I thought we could start at the beginning. I just wanted to ask you what got you into filmmaking and then documentary filmmaking more specifically.
Okay, so the path to film and documentary film. So actually from an early age, I was quite taken with photography. I started working for local newspapers as a teenager, as a photographer, and then for photo agencies in Dublin whilst I was in school on my summer holidays. And from that, I kind of got the bug of actually moving image. And so I got into the Dún Laoghaire Film School. Mm-hmm. So that was after I took a year off after school to make a portfolio, shoot short films and get my portfolio together to have the chance to get in there. And that was it then. So I did the 3 years at Dún Laoghaire, and I'd say that was kind of the start.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say influenced you on your journey as a filmmaker? Like, what were the directors of films that you took inspiration from?
Thinking back, it's gone back a few years now to that time. I suppose like this is late 90s, early noughties, the stuff that we were into. I definitely remember, I don't know if people remember a show called Homicide, Life on the Streets. So it was a precursor to The Wire. It was with David Simons. But I remember myself and Tygo Sullivan, another filmmaker who I work with a lot, we were hanging around a lot in bedsits in Dublin at that time, watching stuff. I remember Homicide Life on the Streets being something quite groundbreaking at the time. Definitely, where television broke from being television to like kind of cinema, but it was a series, handheld camera work. It was like something that hadn't been seen before. And then film-wise, I think then and even now, I suppose we're still kind of quite classicalists, as in loving it's Bellatar, Tarkovsky. I always go back to watching those films then and now. Like it's like I actually don't watch that much film, and when I do, I just always go back to the kind of comfort food films like them.
One thing that I thought was really interesting with your style of documentary filmmaking is that you use elements from narrative cinema. How did that come about?
Yeah, I think documentary had been quite traditional in ways. So I suppose you could break it up into kind of televisual documentary where it's a lot of talking heads, it's a lot of information being carried by people pretty much in a static frame, telling the story, often more suited to radio or what would be a podcast now than needing a visual accompaniment. But then the classic kind of Fred Wiseman, verite on the shoulder, coming out of the French New Wave, just observe life completely subjectively, just try and capture what people are doing, like instead of telling the story, caption that experience. And then I suppose then kind of I wouldn't like to call it like the hybrid doc, or there was definitely movement in documentary over the last 15, 20 years of, is there other ways? And everybody kind of definitely lent into the kind of tropes and mechanism of fiction film and wondering if they could be utilised in a way to bring a different perspective, a new way of looking at reality in documentary. And the cinematic was a huge part of that. So as we see now, people shoot documentaries on the highest end equipment and use a lot of the equipment that you would get on a fiction feature film. And I suppose, like my background as a photographer and I shoot other people's films and stuff. I'm very, very interested in image making. So I suppose that definitely influenced why I would lean hard into, well, I have done for a while, but like the most recent film now probably isn't that at all. So, but yeah, I suppose that was the catalyst for leaning into the more cinematic image in documentary.
In Tin City, from the opening shot to the final one, it immediately initiates the thought process. Looking at your filmography with the Lonely Battle of Thomas Reid, what I noticed was this exploration of power structures and also power dichotomies. And I was wondering if you could say more about that and what draws you to the subject matters that your films investigate.
Yeah, definitely very much attracted to that in the work that we make. Like the political element to the work for myself and for Tig or Adrian Duncan, another filmmaker that I have the good fortune to work with as well. It's really interesting if the work can do two things, be a piece of film or a piece of art, but also have a voice or have a political point. I think if all three can happen in the same unit and the same thing, it's kind of what you always aspire to. But yeah, like with the Lonely Battle of Thomas Reid, living in a country, living in Ireland, and just living through that experience of seeing the country sold and created to be a shell company for corporations around the world to come, whilst it's brought great benefit. It's obviously something that's really difficult for a lot of people to reconcile themselves with, but this is the horse that we have backed in Ireland to rise us out of the position we were in beforehand. And I obviously get both sides with that. Like Ireland was a very dysfunctional, poor place quite recently, and you can see the allure to it. But yeah, with something like the Lonely Battle of Thomas Reid, like absolutely to be very interested in that subject matter, and then to find the person who could represent that, physically manifest it, like you couldn't script it or fictionalize it, that the factory would be literally towering over his fields, and him going up against the state, and that whole issue of power, your right to protest, your right to fair hearing, due process, and so definitely, like if that political element wasn't to the work or to any of the works really, I think I'd find it hard to work in the medium. I need that for something to research while you're doing it, and something to drive you for the many years it can take to make projects, to keep going at it. It really helps if it's linked to something that you care about or you have thoughts that you would like to express.
With your films, how do you, when you come across a subject matter that interests you and that checks the box of, oh, this is a political matter and I want to investigate that more, how do you know that that is something you want to spend years on research and finding people, putting together a team? Like, how is it gut feeling? What's your process there?
Yeah, it's quite interesting in ways that you definitely get a gut feeling when you come across an article or you read a story or you've just put down a book and you go, oh, this is so interesting, there's something in this. And it often happens that you get those moments and you follow it up with, you reach out to the people and you spend time with them, and it's still good and it still makes sense. But then something can happen and it doesn't come to pass. A recent example we had a great project in the States about a trailer park home owner who had ramped the business up to be $1 billion enterprise, so incredibly wealthy man, just renting out trailer parks and running a tight ship, and trailer parks is a huge part of the housing equation in America. It houses up to 30-40 million people. It's a part of their housing industry. And when I came across him and I went out and shot with him, and it's like, wow, this is going to be a really good film. But then sometimes it was like I didn't go ahead with making that film because it was all just too grey. Like, he wasn't your classic villain. Like, the issue was so complicated and so grey, and it's 1,000 decisions over such a long period of time that ultimately as well, it's a film that you find it very difficult to fund, you know. Documentary has a lot of that, you know, like with Thomas Reid. That's easier to fund because here we've got a man standing up against a corporation. It is a little bit black and white, which for those kind of documentaries where you go into somebody's life and follow them. But multi-millionaire, you know, trailer park entrepreneur who isn't quite the devil or the yeah, what's the word for it? Yeah, sorry.
Saint.
Yeah. So like, yeah, so, and that happens as well. So you definitely, and I'm sure a lot of other filmmakers would say the same in documentary, you find the project, you find the people, you can get to fairly well into the project, and then something happens. I had another great project recently, which everything was set up, and then COVID hit, and by the time it came out the other side, the people who were the two main participants of it, they were quite elderly when we started the process. They'd just the extra 3 years made it possible that they couldn't do the things that they used to do. So yeah, it happens, but yeah, usually it's kind of, but I think we all have them, and lots of them, but not all of them come to fruition.
That would bring us to Tin City. I felt like that was, the film spoke for itself.
Yeah, the recent one with Tin City, that was kind of a departure for me in ways, because the film was going to be made in another way. But then I worked with an archive producer here, Christine Koopin, and she unearthed this incredible archive from German television from the late 70s. And yeah, that was like, okay, we just have to, like almost like in an art gallery exhibition context, we just need to lay the pieces out. And the final piece, there's kind of 3 chapters to it. The final chapter was the one, again, maybe like the previous films, where we did the reenactment, where we brought something, again, using a verbatim text. So the interview with the IRA spokesperson is from an interview that was printed in a German Stern magazine in 1989, at the time that all of this was in situ and in place. And then we just used actors or mannequins to visually, create the landscape that you could, engage with that interview. So yeah, similar to the other films, it's, but again, I don't think there's anybody watching the film thinking, oh, is that created or is that not archived, or there's any issues of what's real or what's not. But yeah, everything in the film is reality or is documented reality, which now, as I think of it, as I'm talking to you, that's kind of pretty much all the stuff that I do and I'm drawn to. I worked for years as a newspaper photographer as well, so spending many, many years with journalists, travelling up and down the country, searching for people and following stories. And yeah, I suppose maybe it's a part of that background, very interested in taking verbatim documentary sources of evidence, of transcripts of what people say, and working with them in film, as opposed to ever ending up in a position where I would fancy to write fiction. I don't think that would be my skill sets or abilities. So yeah, all the films kind of circle around that kind of idea.
It sounds like you're somewhat adapting material, but you also you keep the source text, but then add a creative layer on top. That also leads me to my next question, because I was about to ask you what it was like to work with the archival footage for Tin City, and then also bring in these. You already mentioned that you shot additional footage, right? My guess, the scene in the forest, with it. That was. Could you say more about that? Because that was a really, really interesting shot.
Yeah, so with this film, we kind of see it as 3 chapters. The first chapter of the film is without voice, just images, the raw, almost like found footage of this very, very strange town with mannequins in it somewhere in a country we don't know. The second chapter uses archive again from a German television station that sends out an investigative news team, documentary team, to break into the compound, because this Tin City is really hard to access, part of a huge military complex, but it's in the middle of the forest, so you could get in, and they go and they try to find out what it is. So that's the second section of it, is the perspective from Germany of what is this thing in the world that we've seen. And then the third section, third chapter is the context. So the thing in the world, what is it? And then the context, which is we have an interview between a German journalist in the Stern magazine and a spokesperson for the IRA. So that section was only printed in text. So the German public got to read the perspective of the IRA from 1989 around. There was a German wife of a British soldier that was shot around the time just before that prompted this interview. And that final chapter is the chapter we make. And yeah, because the German public were only presented with this in its text format, we don't voice the text in our film. We voice the interviewer in German, and you just get to read the direct translated text as reported. And then we decided to take and transplant the kind of mummified mannequins from Tin City and take them outside of Tin City and bring them to a forest and to a campsite, like a family, and position them there and see what it looked like where you're hearing the context of this interview playing out over. And we found that really, for us, really interesting. The mannequins, when you see them in Tin City, are completely devoid of any autonomy or even humanity. It's a really strange thing to do in an urban conflict training zone, to populate it with mannequins. I think the opposite effect would happen in relation to soldiers and their care and attention around civilians when you set them up as mummified, stupefied mannequins. So the idea for us, well, let's take them out of there and bring them somewhere else. So that's what the final chapter is about, to see what that looks like. And also the forest is obviously classically, historically, it's the refuge of the outlaw, of the person who is driven away from, civilized society. It's to the forest that they go. And also the Northern Ireland Troubles, that part of the campaign that happened on mainland Europe, in Holland and in Germany, those overseas departments for the IRA, they would have hidden their cache of guns always in forests in Germany. So it was always, that's where they kept their arms caches. So that was the reason as well to bring into the forest. So yeah, I think when we're talking about that film, there's a shot, it's about 3 minutes long, just panning the forest. It's kind of the perspective of, you retreat to the forest, and 90% of the stuff that they did when they were in Holland and Germany was just staking out sites and locations, So the actual incidents, the terrorist attacks, would last 30 seconds, but there would be days and days and days of just surveying and observing German sites and British military manoeuvres. And so we kind of leaned into that with our chapter that we created for the third part of the film.
You already mentioned the German voiceover, and that is something that I found really interesting while watching the film, because when it's a British military facility, I kind of thought, there's going to be English voiceover, and then I started thinking about it and kind of thought language somewhat reflects the place then. And what you already mentioned with the Stern interview that you used makes sense it then makes sense with the images and the topic to keep the original language and then have the subtitles in English. I was just wondering, how did you do who recorded the German voiceover? Because watching it felt like you're taking two steps back and very, like it echoed the artifice of the mannequins.
Yeah. So the voice of the interviewer that we recreated was done with AI. So yeah, it just seemed like I thought just early on it was just like the technology is there, and it just seemed an interesting way to just search around for voice with using the AI engines, and it was like, there is a slight disconnect. Yeah, I think with it that
it felt really alienating, I think, and it worked.
Okay,
as I was watching it, I was kind of wondering, okay, what's the story behind the voiceover?
Okay, great. Yeah, no, that's good to hear actually, because it's kind of frightening as well. Like, as we're on the brink here of this incredible power and technology. But yeah, for me, the only thing, I suppose, as I was saying earlier, that has to be authentic or real in a lot of the work that I do is, as long as it's a verbatim text. If it's an actor or if it's a machine reading it out, the most important thing is not the messenger, but the message. So, kind of always at pains that it's translated, it's the original text word for word, that you don't tamper with it, and in the translation as close as possible to the original text. Yeah, possibly something we can use again in future projects as well. Just to answer your question about the film being in German, and we know it's a British military site about an Irish conflict. I think that was the major attraction to the project. There was some part of the Northern Ireland conflict that I didn't know of until I came across it. But it's just that idea of a conflict between two other, essentially, countries or states, and that being transplanted and taking place in a third site that's completely wholly unconnected to it. And by dint of transplanting an element of the conflict to this constructed city in the middle of a forest, it then triggered the war being brought from the area where it was happening between England and Northern Ireland onto the host nation, the Germans. The absolute banana-ness and absurdity of that was really interesting. So it only made sense to let the German people, the TV, the perspective of them trying to get to grips and understand what this thing is. So that's why, it of course had to be in German, because it was actually, it's a part of that conflict that was happening in Germany, and the German perspective on it was actually the really interesting perspective on it, because it was, their little part of that conflict, bizarrely. Same, the Dutch had it too. There was it was mostly in Holland and Germany that any of the kind of terrorist attacks or attacks on British military occurred, those two countries.
With a film, what do you hope audience members take away from it?
I think when I go to the cinema or to a film festival and look at a film, what I look for, I think, is something that provokes thought, and that's always good. So as far if I can be involved in film that does that, even on a moment, that's good. But the idea of didactic, preachy work, or making films that have really strong, overt political statements to make, whilst they are really brilliant and important films, I think I'm more drawn towards films that present something strange in the world, try and present it as objectively as possible, and just let the evidence or the reality or the documents tell the truth to whoever watches it, and for them to make up their mind. So I think that's kind of the aim or the aspiration in making the work.
Where can people watch your film?
So it's in Paris next month at Cinema de Real, Families in Paris, and hoping to get it into Cork Film Festival later in the year. We love what they do down there in Cork and their programme, and we've had the good fortune to show some of our other experimental short films and long films there. So yeah, hopefully Cork will be its Irish outing.
Very exciting. Everybody should head to Cork now. Well, thank you so much.
So now Naemi chats with Australian filmmaker Sophie Somerville, whose first feature film, Fwends, premiered at the Delphi Film Plast.
I thought we could maybe kick this off by just, first of all, huge congratulations again on having the world premiere of Fwends. And I was wondering if you could just tell us a bit about the film. What is it about?
Sure. So Fwends is about two young women, one girl called Em and another one called Jessie. Em is from Sydney and Jessie lives in Melbourne, and they meet up for a weekend and they just hang out in Melbourne and get up to a lot of interesting shenanigans.
That's such a cool summary. Yeah, it kind of unfolds in real time, didn't it? Did I get as I was watching it, I kind of you're immediately thrown into the action, and the friendship is just there. It felt like you're joining two friends on their journey through the city, and I was just wondering, how did you get the idea for the film, and how what did the development process look like? How did you develop the story there?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty unconventional compared to where you would sit down and write a script and do lots of drafts and work on it over lots of years. The development time was 3 months or 2 months or something, so a really, really short amount of time. I wrote a treatment document that was really, really messy and really rough, and I used that to get the actors in. I was like, I don't know what this is, but maybe you want to do it with me. I don't know. And then sort of while I was rehearsing, but we weren't really rehearsing. We were sort of just catching up and getting to know each other. But through that process, I sort of started to develop a shooting plan for the film. So it was more driven by deciding to go to certain locations and being like, we're going to shoot something here. But often it wasn't this certain feeling of I know exactly what's going to happen in that place. So it was a really, really different way of working because all of the phases were kind of smushed together. So there was writing happening while we were shooting, and yes, it was complicated.
Yeah, no, but it worked out so well, was it just because I really enjoyed seeing female friendship on screen. It was just such a delight spending time with with the characters on screen. And I was just wondering where did you get the idea from?
I think I always wanted to make my first feature in a really low budget, small crew kind of guerrilla style kind of way. And I was thinking a lot about My Dinner with Andre and films that are kind of these and Before Sunrise, of course, films that are kind of these two-handers that are just driven by amazing performance and have all this really deep philosophical stuff going on. And then I sort of started to shape the film being I just want to do an Australian female version of that. But then it also mixed with Daisies, which is a film that I love, which is about these two women going around doing really rebellious, chaotic stuff together. So yeah, just sort of combined all those influences. And then I also, with the two characters of Em and Jessie, I guess I just wanted to create two characters that feel like friends that I have, or parts of myself, people that come from the world that I'm living in and that my friends are living in.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Okay. And how did you, when you had your treatment ready and reached out to potential actors, how did you what did that process look like? Because it's so driven by the two characters, so dialogue heavy.
Yeah, so because we were making this with so little money, it was really not being let's make lots of money. It was really just being let's create a working experience where you get to try new things and I get to try new things, and let's make it equally worthwhile. So you get to craft this character that maybe feels yours and feels personal to you. So I really emphasized that when I was working with Em and Mel. I was like, I just want to create like the coolest shoot ever for you guys.
Yeah, it works. Was that part of the meetup, like develop it for 3 months? Like, did you bring them in immediately and then you kind of developed the story? How much time did you have before the shoot?
Yeah, it was. It was like, yeah, I think we cast in like September and then we were shooting by November. So yeah, less than 3 months. Um,
That's
yeah.
impressive. Yeah, I was also like, you already mentioned you had such a like small budget. Like, what was that like working with that? I know there's like, I sometimes feel like when you kind of like limit it on your like money, it kind of like makes you more creative in a sense because you have to work around these things and then come up with solutions that you maybe like would have not found, like, like this shot doesn't work because we can't do this and that, so you find like really like cool creative ways to work around that.
Yeah, it was fully that. So, because the film, yeah, it was like the lowest budget you can imagine for this film. So, I just sort of had to reframe my whole mindset. So rather than it being like, I want this room filled with all these objects, filled with these people wearing these clothes, like you have to change your mentality. So where you sort of like, okay, I have this house, so I'm going to write a scene for this house, and I'm going to use the props that are available, like the furniture that's in that house, and then with the parks and the parts of the city, I'd be like, okay, I know I'm going to shoot there, so that means I'm going to integrate places that are real in that part of the city and use them in the story. So it's really about just being like, what is there as opposed to what do I not have? Because then when you start thinking about that, you end up requiring all these things. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. And with the city, did you, because they walk a lot,
Yeah.
did you like plan the route in advance and then like go through it chronologically? Like, what did the shoot look like?
Yeah, we did try to shoot the film chronologically, for the whole production basically. So I was really, that was like a really clear, strict thing. I was like, we have to shoot this chronologically because otherwise it'll be too difficult to like do. And yeah, so that, I mean that, and yeah, planning the route. Yeah, we did sort of have, we sort of planned the shoot around, we'd start here and then walk to that place and then walk to the next place. Um and yeah, it was quite, but it would also mean that we'd have to change things on the go because like we would, be filming outside the station, but we wouldn't know if there'd be people interfering with us and, randoms about in the world. And so we'd have to be able to change things on the fly. So there was a lot of snap decisions.
You already mentioned this, like there was a lot of improv involved though. This film was like the dialogues on screen happen, like did they also like originate from improvisation?
Yeah, so it's all improvisation. Yeah, all the dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I know. Like you have to congratulate the act. Every time I watch it, I'm just like, how are Em and Mel this good? Like it's just amazing to me. Um, yeah, I think we were just really, because we were shooting chronologically, it just gave them so much living story for them to just immediately click into what would happen now. So it's like, oh, this just happened. It's like we had the parallel universe running of the film and our lives and the shoot, and it's like we were just kind of stacking up this like imaginary universe of where they're at. And I think that gave them so much to draw from, because then we'd get to a certain place and Em and Mel would be like, they'd be like, no, but she'd be feeling this because that just happened and blah blah blah. And then we'd be like, oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that, you already mentioned that if it was improv, like did you as a director like kind of like nudge them in a certain direction when you were like going through the scenes, or how did that emerge?
The mental health. So I sort of wrote with the two characters, I sort of wrote a lot of backstory about them that Em and Mel kind of workshopped together. And I think the mental health stuff was always there in the background for Jesse. And then the climate change, yeah, I think there was an early document that talked about Em's feelings about that. But then I think what also made that really happen was because I gave Em that book that she reads from. I gave her that as a prop, which was in her bag. and she was like reading it while we were shooting because she's a massive bookworm, and like whenever we weren't rolling, she was reading a book. And that kind of infiltrated her mind, and she sort of was like, "Oh, they don't fund research for scientists," and she was like really angry and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think, and then I was like, let's just put the book in the movie. So then the book ended up in the movie, and luckily I did get permission from the author to let us feature it. But yeah, that theme did kind of organically come out of the way we were working in a way. Yeah.
That was no, the scenes with that were really like they were so good. Also like just having that like the like I was so surprised when I heard that like that was just a prop, and what you made of the prop on screen, like like bring it into the narrative, it fits so well. Um
Yeah.
that wow. And with like what I was wondering as well with improv, do you have any, because you already have two shorts out there. Um,
Mm.
what are like with that experience, what are the like the pros and the cons of, like improv on screen?
Mm. It adds a lot of difficulty. Like so I first did it in my short film Peeps because I was working with 13-year-old girls, and like we just did rehearsal where they were just playing around, and they were so funny when they were just letting loose, and I was like, let's just let them do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, but then you do have to really strategically think around how am I going to capture this and get the coverage and not stitch myself up in the edit so that I have people saying things that I can't cut around. So with Fwends, because I knew I was going to work that way, me and Carter Look, the cinematographer, sort of designed these, like a lot of the scenes are oneers, or there'll be like this one master shot, and we would sort of design the scene around being like, this is where they'll travel to, this is where the camera will move, they'll say something there, and then they'll leave, and that'll be the scene. And we'd only do that one shot for the scene.
Mm-hmm. Is that how
Yeah.
how these, like, was it the long shots came about, where you kind of, like slowly zoom in?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Because it was just kind of like they were improving, and also Carter, the cinematographer, was as well. He was just being like, I guess I'll just keep zooming. And so yeah, so it's a really loose way of working. Yeah, but then there are other scenes where we did change that up. So that cafe scene, we did try to get different angles and try to smush together different things. But yeah, I'm still learning about how to work with this with improv, and yeah,
Mm.
there's a lot to learn about it.
No, yeah, no, certainly. And then the stylistically, the scene, when they go out, go partying, that
Mm.
part with the edit, like how did you go about that? Because that was so, like, obviously look different from the rest of the film.
Yeah,
What was that
yeah.
like, like shooting that and then also editing it afterwards?
Well, yeah, it was one of those things where like when you're limited by budget, you just have to think of a creative way of doing it another way. So, we couldn't afford to like hire out a club and fill it with 50 extras. Like that was just so out of the realm of possibility for us. Um, so yeah, the shooting style came about out of us being like, we want to do this guerrilla style thing, but we need to be even more guerrilla style than we were when we were on the city. So let's just take a camcorder and a Super 8 camera and just completely change the style of the movie because why not? They're on drugs. Um, yeah, and it was so fun to shoot because it was just like the line between us working and us partying was like very blurry.
Very cool though. Yeah, no, that looked like that was so like it definitely worked. It was so much fun to watch, and it kind of like it fit in like to the like
Mm.
it was just yeah, it was a nice journey to like embark on with them. Um and with the you already with the guerrilla like filming, I was just wondering, like, how do you go about that? Because, like, Melbourne is such a central character in the film. Like, what was it like, like filming out in the city?
You always think that it's going to be stressful, but it's always more chill than you think, because I think the world is so used to cameras being out in the world. And yeah, we did have a large camera with a large lens, but we also looked very TV like. So yeah, so a lot of
Did
yeah,
people stop for interviews?
yeah, sometimes there'd be like creepy old people coming up and being like, I used to work on Channel 7, and yeah. Um and like yeah, you would get some attention, and sometimes you'd have like this would be pretty common, is you'd have all these unusable takes because someone would walk past and be like, meh, or like do something silly.
Yeah, yeah.
But, but yeah, like the majority of the time, like people are just absorbed in their own lives, like when they're walking around in the city. So if you're doing something odd in the corner, like the majority of people don't notice you. Yeah.
Yeah. Ah, fair enough, yeah. And one of the characters, the clown in the film, could you tell us a bit more about him? Because I think, like how that came about.
Mm. So we cast him on the street because we found him on the city while we were filming, and we were like, oh, it'd be so funny if they meet this clown. So we just ran up to him and caught him and convinced him to be part of the film with us. Um and yeah, uh it was very stressful the moment we were shooting him, because we were like, oh, we have so little time, and we were on the like main bridge in the center of the city.
Mm.
Yeah. But I'm really, really glad that that he ended up having his moment in the film, and he was such a generous, lovely person. So yeah.
No, it was such a yeah, no, that was such a like his character, and then there were so many like other like elements in the film. For instance, the when they're in the park, the ladybug scene,
Mm.
how did that come about?
Yeah, it was a similar thing where we were just shooting and we found a ladybug, and I was like, put him in the movie. So yeah, and like yeah, at the time everyone was like, "You sure? Like you want to change the whole scene and put the ladybug in?" But it was kind of like at that point, yeah, we'd done all these chaotic decisions, so it was like, yeah, put it in. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, and yeah, I love that scene because it's just so uh real. It's just yeah, that's a real ladybug. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, no, that is that because like in a sense here, like you also you creating a narrative, but on the other hand, then giving that you have so much improv, you have the film is improv,
Mhm.
um, and that you're like filming in the city, it feels like it's documenting a particular moment in time, and these characters, despite them being fictional, the
Mm.
sentiment. Um, and I thought, yeah, I found that like it came across so well. It was so strong, especially with the feel like the friendship. It just seemed so natural, and the conversations they were having, like that is conversations that you'd be having with your friends. So yeah, and also on that note, like with their like relationship, um, what was it like? Because like they come to like they haven't seen each other in a while. Um, how did did it just like oh sorry, no, there goes my red thread. Damn, I took
No,
so
that's
many
it.
like I have fancy schmancy notes here. But I think I got way too excited about the ladybug. um no, um I suppose no with the here we go again, okay. With their friendship, so they hadn't seen each other in a while. Like, where do we join? Like, like for how many years? Because that was something that I kept wondering. Like, how far apart had they like grown in the time that they
Mm.
hadn't spent time together?
I think me and Mel always thought that they were like friends in high school. Yeah, they were definitely friends in high school, and then they kind of became those types of friends who you'd like send a meme like every couple of months, and you'd get like a laugh reaction, but then you wouldn't talk for like a couple of months,
Yeah,
and then like more time would go by, and then like Jesse would spontaneously get a message being like, "Oh, I'm coming down to Melbourne tomorrow. Like, let's meet up."
yeah,
And then yeah, it's that awkward thing of being like, "Oh, cool, yeah, I'll make time to see you." Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense because I was watching and I was like, yeah, this is like you can kind of like tell that they have like, they have been close friends in the past, but it's kind of,
Mm.
grown more distant, which made like their argument like in the film like the even more tense. I felt like did that like the moment in with it like in the film did that just also like the timing of it? Did that come about as well, like on, on the spot? Like how did that develop?
Yeah, so that was yeah, we did at that point when we were filming that, we had no idea how the rest of the film was going to go. Um, and we did a few takes where it didn't get as confrontational, and we were just like, let's just add something in here. And then yeah, all that stuff was coming out of Jesse, and we were like, this is like crazy. This is amazing. Um, yeah, so because of the way we shot the film, we had 5 days, and then we had a month off, and then we shot the second half 5 days later. So when we were shooting that, I sort of decided like, cool, this is a great spot to end because then we can workshop how to do the rest of the film. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah, that's why I love that scene so much because it just like happens to you. Like it just feels so like raw in the way yeah, it doesn't feel rehearsed at all.
No, no,
Yeah.
no, no, not at all. It was you're just there and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
no, oh
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, that was because yeah, they were like also like the way it played out, like that could have, like it felt like it was written. Like and it makes it
Mm.
all the more like, you know, like I was all the more like impressed finding out that it was improvised. Like
Yeah.
wow. Um
Yeah, that's really Melissa and Emmanuel being like incredible. Yeah.
yeah, no. Have you worked with them before? Or was this like have you yeah.
Um, yeah, I've worked with Melissa. I made a shot with her for 2021, 3 years ago. And I tried to do an improvisational thing as well with her. So we'd done that kind of work together. And then with Emmanuel, no, we hadn't worked together before that, but I sort of knew about her work because she's a playwright who's written this amazing play that's done really well in Australia.
Mhm.
Um, and I knew she was probably an incredibly intelligent person. So I was like, yeah, yeah, it was incredible working with her. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, no, it's up like the performances are absolutely fantastic. And then with um oh god, this is like 7 a.m. Um
Mm. Oh,
I'm
yeah.
I know was like eyeing my questions. Um with the like like you have your film, you have your feature out now. And I usually like I always love asking like where can people watch it?
Mm.
Because it's like if it's at the festival, you obviously get the festival crowd, everybody's super excited. But I'm always wondering like, like where can we see it? You know?
Yeah. I wish I had a clear answer for you right now. Unfortunately, the film's like we're trying to figure out a festival strategy, um, which is like a new terminology for me because previous to this, like when I had a film get into a festival, I'd just be like, yes, and like accept straight away. But now apparently there has to be more thought put into it of like,
Yeah.
yeah, it needs to, when to premiere in certain territories and which festivals it needs to premiere at. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I can't say where it will be at next, but
Yeah.
it will be places around the world.
It will be around. No, I can imagine it will be around. Okay, so we'll keep an eye out for it. And then
Yeah.
do you have any future projects already like planned, anything you'd like to do? Is it, like as improv or what what are your
Mm.
plans?
Yeah, yeah. I have a new film that I wrote the script for after I finished Fwends. And yeah, I really, really, really want to get it moving and start working on it because it is gonna be, especially after seeing how well Fwends was received, it's really empowered me to want to work in that way again. So
Mhm.
yeah, it will be a really different kind of Australian film that we haven't seen really before. So I really am excited to make it.
Yeah. No, we're excited to see it. Absolutely.
Mm.
And I just one question that I wanted to get out that I just remembered was what is it like to when you're directing, what is it like to direct improvisation, like actors who are improvising?
Um, it can be like, it depends on your style as a director, because some directors really need to control. It depends on how. Yeah, I think it kind of depends on what level of letting go you're comfortable with, because yeah, and also how much you trust them, because um with the way I was making Fwends, I was really of the mentality of uh nothing that Emmanuel and Melissa do will be wrong. It will just be their interpretation of the character. So then when they do something and it challenges me, instead of me being like, no, don't do that, that's wrong. And it's gonna be me being like, okay, that's a different perspective. Interesting. Um, so yeah, I can see why for a lot of directors it's really intimidating, because it means handing over the ownership of the character like to the actor fully and being like, you have a go.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's why I credited them. That's why I credit them as writers in the film, because I just am trying to figure out a more appropriate way of being like, yeah, they are partially responsible for who the characters are and how they change and grow throughout the film. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so yeah, because it feels like it brings this more like collaborative, the more like even more because filmmaking is already so collaborative, but then the writing, making the writing process also so collaborative, that brings this element to it.
Yeah.
And I
And
was,
it's
yeah, sorry.
yeah, it's just so fun. Like, that's the only thing I can say about it, is it's once you're willing to let go a bit and be like, okay, maybe I don't know how to tell this story, then it becomes incredibly fun, because you're just in
Yeah,
this like really collaborative imaginary world of just being like, I don't know. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, very cool. And what was it then like having done all that? What was it like to then go in and edit everything?
Um, like there would be some scenes, there would be some takes of certain scenes that I would just be so committed to, like with the where especially because of improvising, like every take would be so different. So you sort of have to decide while you're filming, like you'd just be like, that take is the one, we have to use that, and that's in the film, and that's it. Um, so then sometimes the editing would be really easy, because you'd just be like, cool, that one, that one, that one. But then other times it yeah, other times it is very difficult, especially uh yeah, other parts where you're just trying to um yeah, you have to
Have
make
to be in the film. Yeah.
uh,
Gosh, yeah, no, I can only, yeah, I can imagine. But it must be so fun to be involved in, you know, they always say, oh, like, isn't it that you have like the film you write, the film that is, shot, and then the film you get in the edit, and then be part of that process, all the way.
mm,
Must be, seeing it come together, in all these different settings must be so rewarding.
yeah, it is. It's also like psychologically punishing in many
Oh
ways.
gosh.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I don't
it
know if
worked out.
yeah.
It worked. Like
Yeah.
it's a fantastic feature. Like like
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, making a film is always like a very intense thing you go through, of like these insane highs of like, I'm a genius, and then these like insane lows where you just think you're not a genius at all, like the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you have the
Yeah.
you have the crew come in, and
Yeah.
tell you you're grand. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it was that's what I also enjoy that, like with the, like, because you're not like left in your own like head, because
Mm,
you can't, like, it's, you're part of a team in that sense. So
yeah.
but yeah, no,
Yeah.
oh, very cool. Yeah, because that was one thing, because I can, yeah, it must be like, yeah, directing improv is such an, like, that was a question that I was just wondering, like, how that, but that sounds, yeah, no, letting go and then just letting the creativity,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It really is letting go for me. Yeah. It's just, it's really kind of shifting your idea of being like, a film, when you're making a film, you're very like, this scene will be like, you have this like sequence playing in your head, but it's very much letting go of that idea that
Mhm.
before you start shooting, you have the film playing in your head. You have to let go of the fact that you don't have the film playing in your head. You're just very like, Yeah.
You bring your own ideas to the table, but that's that's very cool. Like also like like being able to do that. Yeah, it's wonderful. Wow. Okay, I think that was sorry, I just had to get that off my chest because I was like, oh, that must be so like I don't know. I was just wondering what that was like. Um
Mm.
but no, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time. This was such an interesting I learned so much.
Oh, yeah.
Whole
Oh,
chat.
thanks.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Naemi. And thank you for listening. So if you enjoyed that podcast, make sure to like, subscribe and rate on the podcast platform of your choice and head over to filmireland.ie for our coverage of cinema in Ireland.